Welcome to Be a Voice. I'm Brick Carpenter, and this is Usula Media. Thanks for joining us today. Today, we are continuing on with our Switching Gears theme for this season's podcast, and I am excited to be sitting here today with somebody that shares a lot of the background of the guests that we've had throughout the season, things that we talked about, things that have been going on in our community and in our country, dealing with substance use disorder, dealing with mental health. And it's a really great segue because we just started June, and June is actually the beginning of Men's Mental Health Month. And I am sitting here today with a good friend of mine. I'm sitting here with Tony LaCerra. Hey, Tony.
What's up, Rick?
Not much. How are you?
Pretty good, man. It's good to see you.
Been a long time. Been a while.
It's been too long.
You're very evasive sometimes.
Yeah, same.
You're a busy man.
Yeah.
You're a busy man traveling, seeing all these metal bands. And
I've been around. I kind of mixed it up past couple of years for sure.
Yeah, watch how you say you've been around, man. It's that'll stick with you. Somebody will take that and run with him. Before you know it, there'll be a whole big drama spread about you, Tony.
It is what it is.
You know, it'll follow you.
Some things you can't stop.
So, Tony, I know you. All right? I know who you are. Tell my guests, who is Tony LaCerra?
Who am I?
Give me a Cliff Note version, and we'll peel some layers back.
Hardworking dude. My own worst enemy most of my life, and you know, I'm in recovery. June 30th will be 6 years, God willing, which I never thought was going to be possible. I come from a good family, military baby. Was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and you know, family's from New York, and lived in Philly and South Jersey.
You were born in Albuquerque?
I was.
And you traveled as a military baby?
Yeah.
A military brat then? Were you one of those, what they call the military brats?
Dad did 4 in the Army, 4 in the Air Force, and New Mexico Tech in between, and that's where I was born.
That's interesting. He did Army and Air Force?
Yeah.
Did he enter the Air Force as an officer then?
That I don't know.
No?
That I don't know. We were on McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey eventually, and then he got out and, kind of kept moving.
That's how you ended up here?
Yeah, my family's from here, right over the bridge in Palmyra. My grandma's 95. She lives there. My dad went to high school there. My brother went to high school there. But we just
You're Palmyra grad?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I knew you were in Jersey now. I didn't know you were a Palmyra grad. Yep. You're real close then.
Yeah.
Real close.
Yeah.
So it's going on how many years? 6 years?
6.
6 years. Holy shit. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Did you ever think you could make it that long?
No, and I never wanted to. I never thought that was going to be my journey. And my mom and my dad's own alcoholism of their family is probably part of the reason why I was born in Albuquerque. Mm-hmm. Right? It was time to get up and go. And, even with it like glaring in my face as a potential, as a possibility, you just don't ever think it's going to be you. And I didn't care. I was too arrogant. I was too hard-headed. If I go back to 17 years old and listen to everything Dad said, the man was right about everything.
I think this is pretty common with a lot of parents. I think when we really sit back and we look at it, I say it all the time. Like, I never wanted to admit it, but my parents were usually always right.
Yeah.
I don't want to admit it, but always right.
Big time.
My mother, especially being the oldest Italian daughter, she's always right, and you don't argue with her.
Right.
You don't even try to. And of course, as kids, we don't want to admit that our parents are right because what the hell do they know?
No, nothing. And I have that natural resistance. I'm going to defy things and challenge things. And, that was, that's a mentality that I still have. I still deal with on a daily basis, but that's also a mentality that I had to break and I had to crack and humble myself to move forward.
Little chip on your shoulder?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah. I get it. I think we all do. We all have that chip on our shoulder. That's sort of one of the reasons that we fall into our ways that we fall into. How many years were you in your active addiction?
Between alcohol and opiates, I drank when I was 15. And it's only now, in hindsight, that I can see that me being hungover on a Wednesday in high school was abnormal, right? That was not the norm. No one else was drinking wine at home the day before by themselves.
But I was going to interject and say, but it's funny because we thought it was normal for somebody like ourselves who are a person that has been dealing with substance use disorder and opiate use disorder and everything else all these years, we thought that was normal. Like, I used to think when I was in corporate America that after work I was supposed to go right to the bar. I was supposed to get on that bar stool. I was supposed to order a shot, order a drink, and sit there until I was shit-faced drunk and ready to black out. I thought that was normal. I thought that everybody did that. I really did.
We did. My family did. It was like the model for coming of age in my family. It wasn't like no one was alcoholic. We just all partied and we did our thing. And, why was I going to be any different than any family member that I saw? And I wasn't.
So you think that it was a lot of learned environment for you? Like a nature nurture, like the nature you're under and the nurture that you were in?
I think it presented like an illusion of safety.
Okay.
And probably even more so fueled my male ego, untouchability, right? Superhero type of BS that, like, just perpetuated me full speed into alcoholism and drug addiction. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't know. Don't know something like this is happening. I blended in very well. That's my specialty, is to blend in, fly below the radar. I learned that from a very young age. If I don't make too much noise, if I don't poke my head up too high, I'm going to get to operate on a level that I want to operate on without oversight or minimal oversight.
Well, I think that comes with the territory of being a person with addiction. I think we are pretty much master manipulators, and more so than that, we know how to fly under the radar. We know how to work it. We're hustlers.
Yeah.
We really are. I mean, people have to understand. People always will sit back and they talk about, like the words they use, like, oh, what a low life, this, that, and the other thing. I don't think people realize that most people that are in active addiction or suffer from some type of, disorder, they're smart. They know how to work it. They know how to work the system. That's how we survived for so long.
And it was. And I didn't know any other way. I didn't know my way was wrong or unspiritual or all these words come to find out later about yourself. And I didn't see anything wrong with it.
At 15, huh? So how many years then was that? And what year, how old were you when you were like, this is it, I've had enough, I'm done?
36.
36. So you're talking about 21 years of your life. 21 years of your life. And I get it, 28 years of my life. I mean, that's a long time. And we missed our formative years, the years where we were supposed to be forming and being able to, like, mature and having these cognitive functions that everybody else was getting. And, we missed a lot of that. We missed those growing years, but we just thought that was sort of normal.
I did. And you don't realize you're not growing when you're doing the same thing that most other people are doing, right? And, I wasn't using heroin in high school. I was blending in, right? College and high school, the weekends and this party atmosphere. It was the only place I wanted to be.
We were escaping who we really were running from, which was ourselves.
Yep.
We're running from ourselves. So we're blending in with other people. And by doing that, it was picking up a beer, picking up some shots,
yep.
Grabbing that bong, blowing a line, and then all of a sudden it progresses. So, we talk about this as being a disease when we talk about addiction. People talk about it as being a disease. All right? And when we talk about being a disease, it means that it's, classified as that disease. Did you ever look at it like you had a disease, or you just looked at it like you were out getting fucked up?
That was a really hard thing for me to wrap my head around, because that was a weakness. That there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not broken, right? Like, I don't have a disease. You guys just can't party as much as me, and that's your problem, right? So that was a very hard, humbling notion for me to intake and for me to process that I had a disease. I had a disease of the mind. And again, now, sitting here, this makes sense before the first drink, right? This makes sense most of my life. 4 or 5 years old, there's isms, right? There's
6 years is a long time for somebody who has spent a majority of their lives in an active addiction. 6 years is a very long time then to be out of that. And, I think we talk a lot about what happened to us. I mean, we all have our war stories. I mean, you and I could peel those layers back and we could talk about war stories that would spin other people's heads, but not our own. We'd be like, oh, yeah, I can relate to that, or I get that. In the 6 years, though, that you've been working on your recovery and your sobriety, you're fully sober. There's no medical assisted treatment in there. There's no Suboxone. There's no methadone, anything like that. No. You just went right in. In these 6 years, what have you learned about yourself?
One, that I've been my own worst nightmare most of my life. Two, that there was core things about myself, whether they were from my parents, from my family, that I always had, but I couldn't unlock. I couldn't fully harness these good qualities about myself, because I could do good for a while and then everything I had just kind of slipped through my fingers, right? Mm-hmm. Women, cars, owned a house. I did this all while being a weekend warrior, and probably a lot of Wednesday and Thursday nights also. It all just starts to blur together.
There is no such thing as a weekend once you go into full blown addiction. The weekends could be a Monday or a Tuesday or whatever the case may be. But I know what you mean, and it becomes hard to wrap your head around. But you're functional. You were able to provide
for a time.
Yep. You got, and I think some people don't realize that. Like, I was functional. At least I thought I was functional. I think other people realized there was something going on there that wasn't so functional. But at least I was able to get up. I went to work and I did what I had to do. It progressively spirals, doesn't it?
It does. And it was the same thing with, it was presentation. And I owned a house and the lawn was cut and all outside accounts. Like, I'm a good neighbor, brother, son, grandson, and none of that could have been farther from the truth. It was just smoke and mirrors.
Facade.
Yeah.
It was just that aesthetic you put up in front of people.
Yeah.
Really good at that, aren't we? We're good at putting masks on.
Yeah. For a long time.
Absolutely.
For a long time. And people, I think that's what Normies, my dad type of person, my brother type of person, they wouldn't have had that endurance, right? They don't understand why that went on for so long, because it's not normal to them. And that normal that we can make and not think twice about it. And just that adaptiveness to anything and everything. And, if I'm getting high and my go-to's there, then I'm going to deal with anything. I'm going to do anything.
Mm-hmm. It's funny you said normies. I don't think people really know that term when we're in active addiction, to us, the normies are the people that can actually pick up that drink and have a drink and put it down and walk away from it. Whereas we pick up one and before we know, we're a 12 pack into it and, we're ripping an 8-ball and we're cruising down the streets looking for some bags, And, normies, and as we call them, and I love the term now because it refers really to a lot of people, sometimes there's resentment with that too, especially if it's in your own family. Like, why am I the one that was dealt these cards and you're able to walk around and do what you can do?
My family is, I didn't spend a night over a family's house until I was past 3 years in recovery. And I get disarmed. If there's anybody and any people that I want to have a beer with and cut loose with, it's my brother, it's my cousin Trevor. This is what we always did. So it was very unnatural to be there for a very long time. And, that is still probably one of my biggest danger zones, because I just get comfortable and disarmed and I could probably have one, right? 6 years, 7 years, who knows? I could have one. And it's just not a door I want to open.
I'm really glad you said that, because I was sitting down talking with a friend of mine, probably 2018 or so, when I was 3 years into recovery or something. And he was in recovery for a while. And I was talking to him when I was, my active addiction, trying to get out of it. He was actually somebody who worked at out in Malvern and stuff like that. And, so I was talking to him and he looked at me and he went, I can't say I'm never, he said, because I think I might crave a beer sometime 5-6 years down the line. And it's really interesting how we, as somebody with addiction, try to justify that in our minds. And who knows, maybe a few years from now we could pick that up, we could do that, it won't harm me. But I know that I can never pick up that needle again, because the minute I do, I'm screwed. I'm done. It's the end of it. But we think about that, don't we? You think about that often, or just every once in a while?
All the time. I think that's part of the delusion of having this disease of the mind, that like I'm that shot out and that like deceptive to my own mind, that like I think 21 years in addiction, right? Someday the scale will be perfectly even, right? And that hour I'll get away with shooting a speedball, right, without consequences. That's the kind of stuff that goes through my head on a daily basis. Not like that I'm actually going to go to Kensington or Camden or pick up, but like, yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
Right? I think anybody would be lying if they said they don't like fantasize or romanticize what it's like when you're in it. Like I say to myself, like, oh wow, like I think I just like to feel that again. But then I think to myself, I don't want to feel what happens 3 weeks after that then.
Right.
So I sort of like play that game in my mind, and I talk a lot of self-talk there. A lot of it, but you found solace. You eventually went from, and I hate to say, because not everything's hardcore. Alcohol's hardcore. If you're an alcoholic, that's going to kill you. That's hardcore. So I don't want to demean that, say that it's less than somebody who is shooting heroin, because that's just deadly, And there's all these things, but like when we sit back and we look at this, like, we were killing ourselves for years, and we were masking it because of other reasons. And I know for me, and I also know for you, because we talked together at one of the centers about this, mental health came into play.
Yeah.
Was mental health something that you dealt with a long time in your life? Did you know about this? Did you realize it? Did you accept it? Or
I've never been diagnosed with anything as far as a mental health disease other than alcoholism, right? The self-diagnosis that was. But,
right.
I think accepting that alcohol was a disease and I had this disease, it kind of broadened my vision and was like, well, what else could I have, right? What else? And I'm a whole nut in my head. If it wasn't for like guys in AA and other guys in recovery that like I'm bouncing stuff off of, I'm like, Tony, you sound like a complete moron right now. I'm like, okay, just checking. Like I don't, trying to slip one by. But if I'm left to my own devices, then yeah, it's it's a pretty sketchy space up there for sure.
Get stuck in your own head?
Yeah. And during the course of my addiction, right, I went to doctors. We tried antidepressants and Suboxone. I tried that, and I abused everything that I was ever on. And it wasn't until you get like 90 days clean, and it's like, well, maybe I wasn't so depressed, right? Maybe I was just kind of like a failure to deal with life on any level.
I don't know if it was. I wouldn't say a failure. I think it's the fear. I think it's fear of it, because in our heads we can't process and have those coping skills like a lot of other people up front. That's why we turned to whatever it was that almost killed us or took our lives. That's our coping mechanism. That's all we knew, and that's how we knew it, because that disease, whether it was the mental health or the addiction, told us that.
Right.
And it's something that we have to work at. So
Constantly.
How many times did you try treatment?
I've been to 7 or 8 different treatments. Detoxes, right? I went to like a real nice detox in Cherry Hill that my father paid for, and I wasted that opportunity.
Oh yeah, if it was a private one that your dad paid for, and it's
Yeah, he'll never let me forget about that.
Oh, I bet he won't. I bet he will hold that over you.
It wasn't cheap, and like it wasn't even worth it. It wasn't even worth it.
Did you do it for him, or did you for you at the time?
I probably did it so people got off my back, there was genuine moments in my addiction where I wanted help and asked for help the best ways I knew how, and didn't want to do what I was doing, didn't want to be how I was being, but like I just I mean, when that's your go-to, you're going there. And I kept going, and I didn't know any other way was possible.
So alcohol was like the beginning of the downfall for you.
Alcohol was my first love, but then, other things came along, and I'm a man, I think, of great efficiency. So like I can't fit a 12 pack in my pocket, but like I can fit a lot of cocaine, pills, or heroin in there. I'd be hungover. It just was a logical transition.
I can understand that and appreciate that.
Producing the same effect.
And we learned that because we're going to sit there at a bar and we're going to spend all that money in one night, get messed up, whatever, when all of a sudden we start realizing that the bills that we're putting down at the bar, we could get cheaper stuff by buying the baggies on the street or buying one little pill that can mess us up for the whole night instead of 5 drinks.
No hangover.
Yeah, we're not buying for anybody else then. We don't have to worry about getting anybody else to drink.
Right.
It's just, it's a vicious cycle, isn't it?
It is.
It is. It really is. So, at this time of your addiction, all these years, I mean, at 15 years of age, were you here on the East Coast then? Were you here in the area?
Yeah. I was born there, and
Yes.
I was on the East Coast really since like kindergarten.
Okay.
And higher.
So this has been home. So what was that point? I mean, I hate to ask that because there's so many aha moments that I talk about. It wasn't just one, but what was that point where you were like, you know what, enough's enough, Tony?
I moved down to Charlotte, North Carolina, because I got out of another rehab. I used the day I got out or the next day. My dad knew at that point I'm bouncing back between mom and dad's basements. Nobody can deal with me for very long. I'm chaotic to be around. I'm going to steal from you eventually. But I ended up in Charlotte, North Carolina, and, things got really bad for me down there. Things got really dark. I was 550 miles away from everything and everyone that I knew as home. And I was truly on my own.
What made you go to Charlotte?
Because it was Kensington and Camden's fault that I was getting high.
So you figured that if you removed yourself from the situations, that you'd be okay, but you forgot that you were taking yourself with you? One of those things?
Exactly.
That you'll find drugs no matter where you go?
I went looking for trouble. If I go looking for trouble, it can drugs, a speeding ticket, a female. Like I'm gonna find it if I go looking. It's without fail.
It's like you have a target on your back, bro.
Yeah.
It's really funny that you ended with the female because that's a downfall for you. That's one of your downfalls sometimes. Don't hold that against him, ladies, because he's a good guy. But it really is a downfall for you, right?
It has been.
Yeah.
It has been. And I think, one that was in recovery, one that was in sobriety, I think it was largely due to a lack of work on myself first. You can't tell a guy that was shooting heroin for on a 2-year run that like you can't have a romantic life when you have 90 days. I didn't want to hear that. You know what I mean? Opiates kill the testosterone level in a man, and when you put that down, there's the urge is strong, and it's it rivals addiction.
The sex drive comes back
completely,
like 100 times, and
storm.
Then all of a sudden that replaces an addiction. And I'll say for myself the same way. Like the minute I was like, oh, this is great. I've now got 30 days under my belt. I feel great. But all of a sudden now I replaced it with that too, because now instead of drinking and drugging, and there you are sexing or gambling or whatever it may be. So you replace that.
Right. Well, I'm not in here for getting laid. Like I have 90 days. I put the drugs down. So like what? Right. What's the problem?
And we nobody talks about this stuff because they're afraid to, because it's taboo, but it's real.
Well, and also, who the hell are you to tell me what I can or can't? Right. Like, and
Yep, exactly.
Again, didn't listen. But these are all. Pat Dooley says life is understood in reverse. And these were just needed lessons.
Pat Dooley. Dooley was on, that. Did you watch? You should watch his. Dooley was on. Dooley was on, and Dooley has some great words of wisdom, and Dooley's Dooley, and it's cool that we are able to learn from each other on that. But and I asked about that because I think it's important for people to know that, like, they talk about it, you see it in movies, like, you're not supposed to have a relationship for X amount of days, and get yourself a plant first, and then if you that whole thing. And
we don't. I have sponsees today that I give them my wisdom. I give them my advice. I say, I'm not going to tell you to not go get laid. I'm not going to tell you what you can and can't do as an adult man. But, like, I'm going to get my 2 cents in, and then I'm just going to wait. And it's happened. And it's, I told you so. But it was me, too. I get it. Like, how can you're going to do what you're going to do.
Yeah, but we knew that, and we know that if we say that to them, like, hey, you know what? Sometimes it's better to keep it in your pants than, you don't get all excited.
And that's another problem, because if you're like me, if you tell me what I can't do, like, I'm going to do it twice, and I'm going to do it more, and the defiance, the resistance.
That's how you got in this position in the first place, probably.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
It's those crazy moments that lead us to these spirals and downfalls. So you have sponsees. So you've been in the program. You've been working the program. I know that. You're very active. You're also active with HA, Heroin Anonymous. You're active with that, which I think is a really great thing. I mean, there are, it's always been AA and then NA. And it's always been one of the two. That's all they ever had. Nobody, and now there's, CA for Cocaine Anonymous, the HA, there's Sex Addicts Anonymous, all that. There's all this, and really being able to peel those layers back. What worked for you with HA that may not have worked with you for another one?
HA was fun. HA I thought was a lot of fun. The meetings were fun, and I mean, it's the same literature. It's the same as AA. You're using the Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book in HA.
Yeah.
But I've been at meetings. I've spoke at meetings. I spoke at a meeting at Pennypacker Park. It was outside, and there were so many people there, and it was one of the first times I spoke, and I talked about drug use, and some old timer got up from the circle, from the group, and, like, left the meeting, and I was just like, oh my God. But, like, also, fuck you. Like, why couldn't I talk about
because you're talking about drugs, and not
yeah.
And it's interesting when you say old timer, because I think people don't realize that too. And I'm going to say there is a division. There is that division. Like, people always say to me, well, do you go to meetings, stuff like that? I can't go to a clubhouse. I can't go to a clubhouse for a meeting because those are old timers. And that thinking I can't align myself with. And sometimes that is off-putting to people.
It's not even that it was off-putting to me. Being raised in the military, it was very militant. I was taught to show respect, and, like, I didn't mean to cut that loose, but, like, I also didn't think it would offend anybody that to that degree. But, like, it came out, I said it, I talked about it, and I don't know. It was a little embarrassing, and it was also, it was a chip on the shoulder. It was like, well, what was such a big deal that, like, I talked about?
Did the guy come back then?
Not that meeting. I wouldn't recognize him if he walked in here, but it was, I'll never forget that, because it was just like, oops. But also, what if that wasn't enough to turn me off at that point, but, like, what if that did turn somebody off? That could absolutely just be so rejecting and embarrassing that it turned somebody off.
But our stories are our stories, Tony. They're not meant for everybody.
Well,
and if somebody is put off by them, then they're not opening themselves to our stories, because I think that's the problem. And I think that's where the division comes in. And I think that's where a lot of times, like, for myself, and I'm going to just use myself as this, I can't speak for anybody else. I hated the rooms. I would go in there and I felt like I didn't belong. I felt like I couldn't say what I wanted to say. I felt like, they say, get your hand up, get the hand up. And when I did, and I would say something, it was like, what are you talking about? Or what are you saying? Or are you high right now? Because this isn't a place for you if you're high right now.
Right.
Well, where is a safe place for me? Well,
right,
then go to treatment. Okay, well, I'm not ready, but I'm here.
There's like a breaking down of it. And I understand, man. I like old school values and traditions. And part of me is old school. But, the AA I have an AA home group right now.
Okay.
It's called Feast First. It's in Morristown, New Jersey. It's Tuesday nights, and in our opening, what the hell is that called? The thing you read in the beginning,
Yeah.
the reading, it says, like, we're going to curse and talk about drugs here. And it's an AA meeting. And, like, to each their own. If you don't like it, then there's plenty of other meetings in Burlington, Camden County, New Jersey.
And there's some lot more conservative meetings too that you can go to, and there's some more that are open. And
there's value that can be extracted from them. Sometimes I aim for meetings with an older than me crowd. I want their wisdom. I've been around guys with 30 plus years, and it's amazing.
So every Tuesday night, you go to a home group.
Yeah.
And it's AA. It's an AA home group.
Yeah.
All right. Do you do HA anymore at all?
When I can.
When you can?
Just my work schedule changed, and locations were convenience. And, I was just at the HA picnic yesterday.
Nice.
Which was fun. And, I get there when I can.
So you, though, Tuesday night is a commitment to yourself and to your sobriety and recovery.
Yeah.
And do you look forward to the meetings? Do you ever and I'm asking because I know there's times where it's like, it starts at 6 and it's like 20 of, I don't even want to go.
I don't want to go to anything. I don't want to do anything. My natural brain is like, you know what, dude, like, forget this podcast, like, go home and, like, get a shower and, like, take a nap, whatever. No, I don't want to do.
You better have showered before you got here.
I don't want to do anything. I came right from work. I just changed.
Me too.
I don't want to do anything. And the fact that, like, I have to now, right, to stay sober, I have to, then, like, is that not being forced on me? I don't like feeling like things are forced on me. Don't they? If you give me my coin 4 days before my actual anniversary, I will take that as disrespect, because now you just put a limitation on me that, like, what if I was going to relapse those next 4 days and now I can't because you gave me my coin 4 days early?
Or that's I'm going to lie to you now?
That's between me and God, those 4 days. Like, you can't just, you know what I mean? But HA, AA, I don't care what the meeting is. I can go to any of those meetings and extract value and relate. And it's a limitation it's a limitation to me that I can only go to one. Why? I'll go to any of them. I'll walk in any of those doors. And this one dude from the last stop, Ponytail Mike, he said, you don't have to dance with everybody as long as you dance with somebody. And that I liked, because I didn't want, I didn't trust anybody.
I like that.
Yeah. I did too. That will always stay with me.
And now when I see him, I'll think about him saying that, because it doesn't look like something he'd say, or it doesn't sound like something that he would say.
Yeah.
So you mentioned God. Did you have a relationship with God prior to going into recovery? Did you ever think about that? Was it the way you were brought up? Or did that become more as you went into your recovery?
My grandmother is 95.
Wow.
She's Roman Catholic, Italian woman.
I was going to say your dad's side, I assume.
Yeah. She was a Catholic school teacher her whole life.
Okay.
St. Charles, Cinnaminson, New Jersey. And the Catholic faith in me and my family isn't going anywhere. I just didn't receive it well, like so many other things.
Yeah.
It was this forced upon me thing. It was an obligation. Sunday school, I'm baptized, confirmed, and whatever the third one is. What's the third one?
I don't know. I was baptized and then confirmation, communion.
That's the one. Yeah.
We just had that as our confirmation. I wasn't a Catholic. I was United Church of Christ, whatever. I don't
know. It was like so many other things in my life. It was like a half-hearted attempt, and more done to appease and just be docile and like, all right. And like, we got in trouble there too, me and my friends. So.
Absolutely. Sunday school is meant for trouble. Going there, getting in trouble.
It was actually an 8th grade graduation, right, for Sunday school, until me and like my one friend Chris and like a couple other guys went through, and after us, they bumped it back to 7th grade because we were that unruly. But that was
you were the game changer.
Yeah, I don't know. I God caught the blame too. Everybody caught the blame. Well, why are my parents giving me so much shit for using and getting high like I want to? girlfriends, like, don't mind your business. Don't worry about it. Like how many pills I took today, you know? But God turned his back on me. Why not? At some point, I was absolutely, I knew nothing of it. I knew nothing of anything.
When we talk about things that happen, and one of them things that happen that we talk about is, relationships. And relationships are something that I suck at. Being a person that with a substance use disorder, my relationships were, I sucked at having relationships with drugs too. I mean, because if I didn't, I would never been in the position I was in. And it was something that I really had a fearful thing about. And I'm not really just talking about intimate relationships. I'm talking about relationships in general. I'm talking about them with friends, with fellowship, stuff like that. Going into recovery for me was really scary because that means now I had to be vulnerable in front of people I didn't know and people I would probably have had nothing in common with or ever have thought twice about hanging out with if it wasn't for our addiction. How are you with relationships now?
Far better than I was.
Because you weren't so great with it, huh?
No, I mean, it's easy now, again, to call myself selfish looking back, right, to all the high school, right? Like, I thought every woman in my life was just crazy because, like, we're fighting and we're breaking up, but, like, I was a terrible boyfriend. I was more concerned about getting drunk than, like, my girlfriend in high school having a good time at her dance. And that's, again, it just doesn't come until you're like, yeah, might not have been the, catch I thought I was. Everything else, it turns out, we're wrong. I was wrong.
Did you ever think that you had all these relationships or you had, these volatile types of relationships or just any type of relationship with some, because of the fact of like that loneliness that sometimes we experience, maybe that isolation of the loneliness?
Yeah, and I think it's also tied to what I saw in childhood, what is the norm, what is, what I was raised amongst, and being in a slightly chaotic household, but like receiving love there also, right, and stability amongst some chaos, right? So like that is intertwined, and like that has to be separated, and that's one thing I found out in recovery. That is like, mommy issues, daddy issues, whatever you want to call them, but like it's all learned stuff. I'm a product of my environment through and through. So,
and that was where I was asking about that nature nurture sort of thing. Like, does it come from the home or does it come from the environment? Does it come from both? Is this something we learn? Is something we're born with? Like, I mean, I know what I can deduce in my own head, but when you sit down and you think about it, because I know you're a thinker, man, and I know that you get in your own head and you overthink things and you come up with scenarios and you're your own worst enemy. We're just going to call that here. You said it before. I'm going to call it again. When you talk about who's your worst enemy, Tony, you are.
Absolutely.
I know that. I mean, that's how much I love you, brother, because I know that you're your worst enemy. So when we talk about this, why is it after 6 years being in recovery, we still go through these motions in our head and we still are our own worst enemies? What's missing?
I don't think anything's missing. I think that's just these are the obstacles in my path. And like these are the hurdles. And like they come at everybody and they come at me differently. And they come at everybody and I deal with them differently, right? The same thing that my brother can deal with, just like straight faced, no emotion, right? Like all of the county is going to know if I'm dealing with that situation. It's just we deal with things differently. And, it's just finding a way to deal with them. And I think seeing that you can, going in situations unafraid.
How old's your brother?
He's 4 years younger than me. So when I was a senior, he was a freshman. And
it's the only sibling you have is that brother?
Yeah.
You guys are tight?
We are becoming more and more tight as my sobriety has gone on. We didn't have the best relationship when I was getting high to a point. And Not because we were mad at each other, not because we fought or like got in a fight or hated each other. It was just lack of presence on my end. And these are the relationships that I have gotten back, even though, they look different today. They look different. But I get to show up for my family. He has a daughter, and I try and get to as many gymnastics competitions, my niece, that I can, and like be there for my dad, my mom, and it's not easy to show up for people. These are things that I don't inherently have, or I certainly don't want to do them, even if I do have them.
Right.
Right. So
Yeah.
like this is an outward display of like familial love, friendship, love that I always thought I had, but like now it's fully unlocked, or I'm at least now fully capable to unlock it when I wasn't before, or just didn't want to,
Which one do you think it was, that you just didn't want to, or you weren't capable of, or both?
I mean, I wasn't capable because I wanted to get high. I didn't want to.
There you go.
I don't want to go Thanksgiving and pretend to be happy. I'm going to sit here and, like, I'm not isolating with the cat. Like, you're isolating.
My gosh, you know how many holidays I was sick at?
Yeah.
I was sick for almost my stomach.
Yeah.
I had bad stomach aches a lot of holidays.
Yeah.
I'm
in the bathroom like 20 times. Like, no one drank that much fluid. Yeah. It's not. It's a lot easier today. It's not a struggle. And still, even now, I'm introverted. I have a social window, and I get very overwhelmed. I get overstimulated. I don't like being, like, if we were in a restaurant eating and there was like too loud music playing, like that would drive me nuts. We're yelling to hear each other and that kind of thing. I get, so like I'm a whole nut still. I drive a truck for work. There's an outward facing camera for liability for accidents.
Right.
I ask them once every couple months, like, are you guys listening to me on the truck? Like, or can you hear me? And they're like, Tony, no. Because I'm on there singing and like cursing people off and just like talking to myself. It would probably be really comical to put a microphone in there, but like,
You're being normal, man, was what it is, but you're being more conscious of it.
right.
Right. I mean,
dabbling in normalcy.
Hey, listen, I walk dogs, and I talk to the dogs all the time. I walk them. People must think I'm a weirdo, but you know what? That's just sort of what we become, and what you talked about it, you're an introvert. Most people who use drugs are introverted, I believe. I believe they become more extroverted or more introverted based upon the drugs that they use or how high they get or how messed up or fucked up they are. And more so than that, the isolation for us, keeps us, and that untrusting aspect too. We've been burnt. We've been burnt, physically, emotionally, mentally. This all takes tolls on us.
Yeah. Trust is, that does not come natural to me. And I think that's been a theme my whole life. That's not, I'm not going to, why would I give you the upper hand and put you in any situation where you could potentially hurt me, harm me, or like, and that's my default is everybody's kept at arm's length. I'm not, let's not.
It's easy to do that. You keep them at arm's length, and that's all they need to know. And then you go on about your way. I'll go about mine. And
right.
We're good.
And that's still, being broken down. That's still evolving today. So
I'm gonna ask a question, and I'm gonna ask a few questions here. And going into recovery is difficult enough without any type of like outside forces or any type of like shit added into the mix of it. We're trying to focus on staying clean, staying alive, trying to get by day. And then we open ourselves up to people because we aren't used to doing that, but we do it because we want to see what happens. So you went into your recovery. Throughout your recovery, you did get involved into a relationship. And if you don't want to talk about it, you say, Britt, shut the fuck up. And I will. But you got married.
I did.
You got married.
I did.
How many years into your sobriety was it that you got married?
September, a little over 2 years. 2 years and a couple months.
2 years, a couple months. And, you know, that's a long time into the recovery, but also sometimes a short period of time. For you, and I'm going to ask this, and were you doing it because there was a love thing there, or were you doing it because there was just somebody there paying attention? And you could also just say, Britt, I'm not talking about this. I'll just ask it a different way then.
No, there was love there. There
Okay.
was absolute love there. Yeah.
You're not married anymore.
No.
And that is a traumatic experience to go through, a separation or a divorce, when you are in love with somebody and you aren't expecting the world or the bottom to be pulled out from underneath you, and especially for somebody who is in recovery, who is newly into their recovery. How did they handle that?
Cried a lot. I leaned heavy on people in the program. I leaned heavy on my family, like therapy. You know, that is a pain I escaped my whole life, because like all these, right, the high school girlfriend I mentioned earlier, and numerous other ones. It was I never felt that. I never had to feel any breakup, and like they left. There was ones that left. There was ones that I left, and you know, either way though, I never sat in that space because I was drinking, I was drugging, and you know, it was 40 years old, potentially going through your first heartbreak, and you know, barely being equipped with enough recovery and enough of emotional maturity and awareness to even really cope with it, really deal with it. I think
I love that you said emotional maturity. That's important to know. I mean, I think people don't realize that a lot of relationships sometimes are based on the fact of the lack of emotional maturity.
And it's like such a double-edged sword in recovery, because it can burn you on either end, either side, and you know, it's one of those things that, like, right, you say that and I hear immature. Like, well, I'm not immature, right? And I kind of was, not because of like lack of growth or lack of intelligence. It's lack of experience that you're not out of your mind on alcohol and like 6 other substances.
It's lack of experience sober.
Yeah.
It's lack of sober experience.
Yeah.
You know what it was like to have relationships when you were messed up. You could walk away from, you didn't care. Your best friend could look at you and say, if you do this again, I'm not, fine. I don't care. I don't need you.
Right.
We didn't need anybody.
Right.
We preferred not to have anybody. It was easier. But then all of a sudden you find this, you know, newfound, you know, freedom and sobriety and recovery, and you get into a relationship where you find these emotions that you didn't have. There's love and all this stuff. You know, and that could send somebody spiraling. So
it almost did. You know, I like I said, I was barely equipped enough to handle that kind of. I mean, it's everything. To just grief, rejection, despair. It was not a fun time in my life.
Did you blame yourself?
No. I think I did. I think as a man, I'm a problem solver. I'm gonna figure it out. Who gets in? I just think staying in that space, this loop, like what went wrong? What am I gonna do? How am I gonna fix it? Right? I think that alone. If I didn't get out of that, my sponsor didn't help me shatter that cycle, I'd have lost my mind staying in there.
Your sponsor had his work cut out for him, didn't he?
He did. He
Yeah.
spent days on the phone, and conversation after conversation, multiple phone calls of hours long per day. You know, completely selfless.
Still your sponsor?
He is.
Still the same guy?
Yeah.
Still through thick and thin now?
He's a lifer, I think.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's you know, he's one of the few people in recovery that have people transcend like fellowship to friendship, right? And I think we've did that a long time ago, and I'm glad.
I'm glad you said that. There is a transcendation from fellowship to friendship, and there is a fine line with that, because a friendship is when you really give almost all of yourself to somebody. The fellowship is when you give them what you want to there and then. So to be able to take that and trust somebody enough to give them all of you, then that speaks volumes, man.
Yeah,
That's a good evolution.
No one showed up for me my entire life like he did, and I think he knew I needed it, and I did need it, and it was cool. It was cool.
So, that right there is, first of all, relationships are a bitch, man. Breakups are the worst. Trying to figure out the relationship to begin with is awful, let alone then you get comfortable and all of a sudden, there's a breakup. Like did that affect your ability to trust in another relationship again?
No. But a lot of time went by, and I ended up spending the time with myself, the time to myself that I should have spent, like when 90 days clean, right? I should have done that then, and I got to do it afterwards, and it just didn't come in the way or the form that I wanted it to. I thought it should, but like it happened anyway, and that's kind of like what you touched on. I've been to concerts by myself. I went to Puerto Rico by myself, Arizona, Miami.
Did your recent trip to Arizona, you were by yourself?
I met friends out there. Like I traveled out there.
You went out, saw Korn and Incubus, right? Who was there?
Yeah, Incubus.
Incubus was there. Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool. And it gave me like a second lust for life within recovery, and that's a huge deal. It's amazing that I can even sit here and say this, because a couple days, weeks, and months after the breakup, I didn't think anything was ever going to be okay again. I really did not think that I was going to experience happiness again. So to be able to do all that and like have that and run with it, it's life's pretty good.
That's awesome to hear. And this person is in recovery as well. Do you ever think that you could have a relationship, an intimate relationship with somebody who's a normie?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I don't see why not. Why should I put a limitation on that either? I don't. So many limitations. I was so self-limiting to myself my whole life, and now it's kind of just like, well, no, let's find out. But like, where I probably failed early on with the early recovery relationship was not being able to implement healthy boundaries, not actually assessing the situation, not actually listening to my instincts, which I can do now with a woman, a normie, a programmer. There's a valuable lesson, and in the worst of situations, we can extract value. It doesn't matter what the situation is. Value can be extracted from that situation, and it's probably not going to come immediately. It certainly didn't, but it came. It came, and don't regret it. I know what I did. I know what I didn't, and it is what it is.
I'm glad you said you don't regret it, because I'm going to ask you have any regrets on anything that you did?
No, man. I got to. I honestly consider it a blessing, because it marked the first relationship of that nature that like I showed up for somebody, and I got to show up for two people, and I'll just leave that at that. I don't. You might get sued, and it might happen twice, because like I'm gonna send you my bill too. So like, you know what I mean? Like, let's not.
Yeah, we'll be fine, I think. I don't think there's going to be... I don't think that person will be listening to this anyway. I hope they do. I mean, there's nothing negative being said, and I think that's something that's really important to know that you know, we're not out to get anybody. We're just we're out to just make things better for ourselves. You know, I don't wish any harm or negativity on, well, some negativity on some people, but I don't wish any harm or anything really bad to happen to somebody. But like, you know, there's these fine lines once again that we're drawn, and you know, we have to either like stay on one side or the other, because the minute we start to erase that, it's blurred.
Well, being in recovery, that's a learning curve paralleling with life in and of itself, because like in recovery and in AA, I'm taught I have to be tolerant and patient and loving to all, and you know, there's limits to that. There's limits to that for every human being, every situation, and you know, I'll call bullshit on that. No, you don't. Like, I am not, never, ever will anybody refer to me as a spiritual guru of recovery, and I'm okay with that. Like, we have roles there, and we have meaning in the situations that we're in, and that's not mine. It's not mine, and I am worlds more spiritual than I was 7 years ago. So it's relative. It's all relative.
I like that. I mean, spirituality grows is what happens. You know, you come into it, you find it. It's not like all of a sudden you go clean, and I hate that word, but you go clean, and all of a sudden spirituality is bestowed upon you. It's, you find it.
Oh, look what I found.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
it's not like
took work.
Yeah.
This took work.
It takes
prayer,
work.
Meditation, spirituality. Right. I still think it is a very strange thing to sit here as a man and talk about like my spiritual life.
Dude,
like,
you sat here as a man talking about you cried.
Yeah, well, that's you know.
Not just that, you sat here as the oldest Italian son and talked about this. Well, and I mean, sometimes our values from where we were raised also dictates who we are.
My dad has three brothers, right? And they're just like, you can't tell what these guys are thinking when they're thinking it. And like, you guys mad? I'm like, we're happy? Like, what's going on, right? So that was my conception as what a man is. And like, that's not me, man. You know, if I stub my finger, like all Kensington's gonna know about it, right? And I'm animated and dramatic and loud and funny and like to laugh, and you know, those are all things that I got more comfortable with being in recovery.
Become comfortable with yourself. People becoming comfortable with themselves in recovery is one of the hardest things to do. The minute you could look in the mirror and stare at yourself for a little while and be happy and be okay with it, I think that's when you arrive, I believe. You know, because it took me the longest time to look at myself in the mirror and be okay with it. You know, now I look at it, I'm like, oh, geez, you look like shit. That's all right. You're alive. You're good. You're sober. You're healthy.
Still standing.
You're still standing.
Yep.
If you could go back to like 18-year-old Tony, you know, 3 years into your drinking and stuff, you know, at 18, we're that age of the young adult. What would you tell 18-year-old Tony?
Just hang on. You're in for a ride. Listen to Dad. Probably would have gone to the military.
Yeah.
Which I considered, but I was just like you said, fear. I was too afraid. I was too afraid. Everybody, you know, that was a very. I think that pushed me farther. The alcohol being at that age, and people are getting set up at Rowan and going away to colleges, and everybody's got a plan. And I'm like, I don't know, like what, you know, that's a joke between me and my dad, that like long-term planning means that in the morning at breakfast time, I know what I'm doing for lunch, right? Like I never knew. I don't know. I don't.
Are you a planner now?
Try and be.
Trying to be?
Yeah, I try and plan things out better and have a scope and you know.
You know, there's a lot of people out there suffering. I mean, we talk about mental health. We talk about addiction. We talk about, you know, the trial. You know, if we peeled a lot more layers back, I mean, we could talk so much more about stuff. You know, there's so many people out there that we still talk to. You know, what is something that you would, like, what's some words of advice that you would give to somebody who's out there and going through this and struggling still? It's tough, isn't it?
Just to keep persevering. You know, I think our perseverance is one thing that, like like I said before, like I don't think my dad and my brother would have fit well into that situation and been able to endure it as long as I did. And like, but they're there, and I was there, and that perseverance, I think, it shifted, right after I put all that stuff down, and it kept me alive, and it kept me hanging on, and it kept me all that other stuff. But now it's right, the light side of it now in recovery, and it's an asset. It's an asset, and the only reason you're still out there at all is because of your perseverance. So just to keep at it, and don't give up.
I love that. That's so perfect too. Keep at it and don't give up, because we're two prime examples of that. We kept at it and we didn't give up. We probably should have checked out a long time ago. We probably should not be sitting here having this conversation.
No, I wanted to.
Absolutely.
Plenty of times. The first time I used a syringe, I loaded it up with 6, and I don't know if I missed or got at other plans, something had other plans for me. I don't know, but just miserable.
Any overdoses?
A couple down in Charlotte. I think even the Narcan was weird down there. I think it was like in a syringe.
Oh yeah, that's becoming more prevalent now, because now the doses aren't even strong enough. So you are still getting the vials, stuff like that. Okay. I just picked some of that up too. I just got some from the state. So and an hour is never enough time to really unpack our lives and what goes on and stuff. But for me to be able to sit here and have this conversation with you and to hear bits and pieces led you to where you are today. I mean, you're not. I hate to say, you're not a success story. You're a survival story, bro. You're a story of survival. People are always like, "Oh, but you're a success story." I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm successful yet, but I'm surviving and I'm thriving.
Success is relative too. I mean, how do you define that?
How do you measure it?
Well, I mean, you can have $1 million and be a complete disaster of a human being and miserable and yeah. How do you define that? And I can define that for myself, as weird as it is.
I was going to ask you, can you?
With some spirituality and some type of peace and being able to add value to situations, to relationships today.
Do you feel like you're a success today?
Yeah.
You should.
Yeah.
6 years, man.
Yeah.
You're still standing after a breakup that was, not just like a relationship, it was a marriage. I mean, that's in your sobriety and everything else you've gone through for that. So there are so many people out there still suffering. The mental health is just going crazy and can't get a handle on it. And with the way the system is nowadays, getting medication and getting treated is so difficult. What are some words that you would give to somebody who's out there struggling?
I'm just gonna have to. They're gonna find something that's gonna work for them, and to keep trying. I know a lot of people with mental health afflictions that all kind of say the same thing: that their medication isn't working properly, that they feel numb when they take it, that makes them not want to take it. And I, I'm not a doctor, but then try something else. Then keep trying something else, and then eventually you're gonna get into that groove, that status quo, and be able to run with it. We're underdog stories, like mental health, addiction, both. It doesn't matter. This is the comeback. This is the chance at the ultimate comeback for all of us, and it's possible for anyone. If me and you were sitting here, it's possible for anyone.
That was actually as you were saying that was really powerful, man. That talking about comeback stories, that right there in itself. Such a perfect way. I don't even want to talk anymore. I don't even want to ask any more questions for the simple fact that you really just summed it up, man. It's a comeback, and what a great place to be. And I'm glad that we're here.
Same.
And I'm glad that you're able to do this. We're going to have to come back and do it. We got to get you in here with Sherm and with Danny Gilman and with Dooley. We'll have a little panel.
Oh my God.
It'll be good. But, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're doing what you do. Thank you for sharing that with me. For viewers out there, Tony is out there. If you are in the New Jersey area, he is living over in Jersey. He has meetings over in Morristown that he goes to. He has connections over there. Reach out. If you need to get in contact with him, you reach out to me. I'll put you in touch with him. We're always willing to help because there's a lot of help that's needed out there. and people are afraid to ask for it and don't, because you don't want to end up in a vicious cycle like all of us, like the rest of us were, you know. So, but thanks for showing up here today. Showing up is half our battle, bro.
The hardest part.
You just said it. You almost didn't want to show up.
I don't want to do anything.
No. Well, that's good, because after this, you can go take that shower, get some food, and go to sleep. But I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate your sharing, and I definitely admire you, and you are an inspiration for sure, my friend.
Thank you, bro.
You're
It's good to
awesome.
see you.
Yeah. So, and you know, with this being Mental Health, you know, Awareness Month for men, and last month being Mental Health Awareness Month in general, and every month being just Awareness Month for everything, whatever it is you stand for, everybody, be a voice. This is Brick Carpenter on Usula Media. Have a great rest of your day.